I don't think he stepped out either. That may be the greatest catch I've ever
seen. Welcome back to another edition of the Giant Overreaction. Shout out to the gang in the building. I saw y'all in the chat. We were chopping it up. Brian Dable was supposed to speak to the media at 2:30. It was not broadcasted live, but you see the message on the screen. Brian Dable just said he is not considering any major changes to his coaching staff. So for all the people that are encouraging the New York Giants to move on from Shane Bowen in particular, and possibly maybe even this whole entire coaching staff, the New York Giants don't look like they're going to be making any changes going into Week 8. And we are just about approaching halfway through the season. And man, from week to week, I don't know if you guys know about the Too Short record with Jay-Z. It was all good just a week ago. That is exactly how I'm feeling, because last week we were coming off that high after beating the Philadelphia Eagles in very impressive fashion. And then you go out here and for the first 3 quarters of this game against the Denver Broncos, everything seemed to be headed in that trajectory of where we thought the New York Giants were going. Very impressive couple of W's from Jackson Dart in his first 3 games, winning 2 of those games. And you go into this game against the Denver Broncos, and it just seemed like everything that could go right for us in those first 3 quarters was going right. And then all of a sudden, things took a turn for the worse. The Broncos improved to 5-2 on the season. They jumped into first place in the AFC West. The Giants fall to 2-5 on the season and fall or stay in last place in the NFC East. Brian Dable has yet to win a game on the road this season. And this is just a devastating loss. And as New York Giants fans, I'm sure you guys have been chopping it up amongst each other and talking about some of those devastating losses that we have had over the last 2 decades of football. I mean, the punt return from Deshaun Jackson comes to mind. The NFC Championship comes to mind on the botched snap on the field goal. But over the last 20 seasons, the New York Giants have 3 losses when leading by 19 points. The rest of the NFL has 3 losses in that span. So that goes to show you how bad, these type of losses have been piling up for our franchise. And it's unfortunate. I went live after the game yesterday on Bleacher Report, and it was one of the most difficult streams I've had to do in a long time, because it just felt like all the momentum was headed into one direction. And literally within a one-play span, the New York Giants are headed right back into the direction that we are all accustomed to seeing this team fall victim to. And, I came in on the preview show on Thursday understanding that the Broncos were a good team, I'll say. Not a great team, but I was not fearful of the Denver Broncos. And in my opinion, they had only had one impressive win on the entire season that came against the Philadelphia Eagles just 2 weeks ago. But you look at the other victories against the Titans, who are 1-5 now, the Bengals, who lost their quarterback for the majority of the season, and the Jets, who are currently the only team in the NFL without a victory. This Broncos team just did not put fear in my eyes. And I felt that way through 3 quarters of this game. And then when we got to the fourth quarter, it's like something snapped for the Denver Broncos and the light switch turned on. And the amount of times I said last season that the Denver Broncos only beat one team over 500 all year long, is more proof of my feelings going into this game. And the Broncos' 2 losses did come on game-winning field goals in Week 2 against the Colts and in Week 3 against the Chargers. And those are their only 2 losses of the season. The Giants came in on an 8-game losing streak on the road. And that is just a reminder of where we are coming from with this whole Brian Dable situation, being the head coach with the New York Giants, and the poor job that he has done as far as results go over the last 2 seasons. And Denver came in with the longest active home winning streak in the NFL at 7 games. They now improved that to 8 games. And the New York Giants were literally that close in breaking that streak. And after being shut out for 3 quarters, the Broncos somehow came out and found a way to win this game 33-32. And man, as much as I, had a difficult time going live on Bleacher Report, it's going to be that much more difficult here today on the Giant Overreaction Show. I almost contemplated not doing any overreactions today, because I almost feel like anything the fan base says today is warranted. Whether they feel we should clean house and fire everybody, or if they felt, they could leave that game coming out of the Denver Broncos matchup with some positives and some moral victories, who am I to tell them that they are wrong on a day like this, where on a Monday we have to deal with one of the most heartbreaking losses that we have ever had to go through as New York Giants fans. Definitely the most heartbreaking loss that I've had to go through during the tenure of being a podcaster here on Authentic and the Beard. And it is just unfortunate. There's nothing that I'm going to be able to tell you guys today that's going to make you feel, I'll say, 180 degrees better about the way the New York Giants went out there and performed. But hopefully this can be a bit of a therapy session, not for just y'all and the family that is in the chat, but also for me to just be able to get some things off my chest. You know, talking with, some of the homies around here who are Washington Commanders fans, they just seem uninvested in football currently at this moment in time because they lost a big game going up against the Dallas Cowboys where they're banged up. Injuries are piling up for them. And they are coming from the highest of highs last season, being in the NFC Championship game, just being one game away from the Super Bowl with a rookie at the quarterback position, to now being a team that is near the bottom of the conference right now. And, the more I tried to pull from my homies and hopefully feel like they could meet me halfway as far as how we feel today, or in that case, yesterday after those losses, it was just a lot of silence. And it just seems like football is just not the thing right now currently in the DMV area. And I'm sure for all of y'all that are dealing with that New York Giants loss up top in New York are definitely going through the same thing. But let's get into it. This intro is going to be a bit bittersweet here, but I figured I would run it back just to remember the vibes that we were coming from entering this Week 7 matchup going up against the Denver Broncos.
Scatterby the back. Dart, design run. Ultimately goes to the touch of the ball. Touchdown Giants! Jackson Dart!
We work too hard. We care about each other too much, man. Own the day, every moment. This group has to dominate from the jump.
In New York City right now is Cam Scatterby.
It's too beautiful out here wasting opportunity. Somebody set the tone for the first down. Just go ahead. Let's go and fight for each other. Here we go.
Drive from 15 yards out. And his first start gives the Giants the lead.
That's a God.
Bro, the expectation every time we step on the field to win. Every rep in practice, every one-on-one, it don't matter. The expectation's to win.
Man, if you could not sleep last night like how I could not sleep, man, I definitely am feeling the vibes today. You know, there was 2 times I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't get to bed until probably 2 to 3 a.m. And I slept from like 2 or 3 a.m. to about 6:30 a.m. And I woke up one time and I was just like, why the fuck did I have to wake up? I was in such I forget what they call that sleep where you're at like that real rest where your body completely just goes into that moment of relaxation where I didn't have to think about the New York Giants. And I thought I was going to stay up for the rest of the day, but I went back to sleep, got a couple more hours of sleep and woke back up, and I didn't feel any better about the way the New York Giants performed in this game. You look at the way we came out of Philadelphia in the last 2 quarters, just straight up dominating, and how that momentum trickled into this game against the Broncos. The Giants were clicking almost like you've never seen in that first half, right? And all I was asking for coming out of that first half was, can we put one more touchdown on the board to really try to put this Broncos team away? You saw Jackson Dart on the first touchdown drive, the audible, just a beautiful play. Touchdown to Daniel Bellinger. The defense clicking. The third Broncos possession, you see Brian Burns get that huge sack on 3rd down. Then he ultimately got his 2nd sack of the game right before the half. Things are just moving. Jackson Dart got that touchdown to Cam Scatterby on the screenplay. And, man, we've been begging to see the New York Giants get back to what we saw in the preseason where they were almost overutilizing the screenplays in preseason. And, we see a touchdown from Cam Scatterby in this game. And everything just going right. The Broncos, 7 possessions through 3 quarters. Punt, 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 turnover on downs, punt, punt. And had I came up here on the preview show and told you guys that is the way that the Broncos' first 7 possessions were going to go, where we're talking about 6 punts and 1 turnover on downs, you would think that the New York Giants had every opportunity to win this game and there would be no chance that we were going to leave Denver without a victory. And it just appeared that, we were coasting to an impressive victory. I was having conversations with people on Twitter during the game and, just talking about how great this offense was looking with the minimal personnel that we have in the wide receiver department, seeing this offense still find ways to move the ball, and then disaster straight up struck us almost like a Busta Rhymes album. And in the 4th quarter, the Broncos scored 33 points. Their drives in the fourth quarter went touchdown, touchdown. Then they got the interception on Jackson Dart, touchdown, touchdown, field goal. And I was witnessing something that I had never seen in all of my fandom. You know, I know that the stakes were not as high as some of the games that we've seen in the past from the Giants where they've squandered big victories like this. You know, the punt return against Deshaun Jackson definitely comes to mind. But something about this game felt more like a collapse than those other games did, in my opinion. I know that nothing was on the line really in this game except just keeping the New York Giants season alive. But the Giants go out there and they blew an 18-point lead with 5 minutes left in the game. They were up 28 or 26-8. And the Broncos go on to score 33 points in that fourth quarter. The New York Giants scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but it all for nothing because the Broncos scored 33 in the fourth quarter. That 33 was the most points in the fourth quarter in NFL history by any team that was shut out for the first 3 quarters of a game. You're talking about a perfect performance by the New York Giants defense through 3 quarters. The Broncos come back versus the New York Giants, snapped a streak. And this statistic is so mind-boggling. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the Broncos come back versus the New York Giants. It snapped a streak in which NFL teams had won 1,602 consecutive games when leading by 18 points in the final 6 minutes of a game. Bo Nix looked like a shell of himself through the first 3 quarters of this game, and then in the fourth quarter, something happened. He became the first player ever to rush for 2 touchdowns and throw for 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of any game in the history of the NFL. When the Broncos trailed 26-8 with 6 minutes and 38 seconds remaining in the game and were facing a 4th and 3, their win probability was less than 1%. And these are just statistics and the type of milestones that teams have accomplished against our team all too often. And just seeing the Giants go out there and shut the Broncos out for 3 quarters, and it's just crazy to see those kind of results in the fourth quarter. It would have been the first time ever the Broncos were shut out in any game. The Broncos have never been shut out in their 66-year history. This would have been the first time that they got shut out. And all of this happened on the day that the Broncos were inducting Demaryius Thomas into the Broncos Ring of Honor. So I don't know if the football gods and Demaryius Thomas were looking down on them in that fourth quarter through the clouds and found a way for them to get this W against our New York Giants. But our defense went from putting on literally a fucking show to then in the fourth quarter asking what the fuck happened to the defense. The Giants led 13-0 at the half, and the defense was just on fire. They had forced Denver to punt the ball on the first 4 drives of the game. The Broncos got inside the 5-yard line on their 5th possession, and the Giants still found a way to get a stop on 4th down. And I was a little bit nervous as the Broncos were going for it on 4th down on that possession, but in the back of my mind, I was saying, wow, if the New York Giants can make a stop here on 4th down, this game is basically in our bag, even though that was in the first half. And Dane Belton came up with a huge hit on Cortland Sutton to stop him right there just short of the goal line. We held the Broncos to 34 rushing yards in the first half, 2 of 8 on 3rd down. And we held the Denver Broncos to just 2.6 yards per carry in the first half. The Broncos had punted 6 times on offense and had 6 possessions go for 21 yards or fewer. We're basically pitching a fucking shutout. And I thought the Giants did a really good job in the first 3 quarters of limiting the explosive plays like we asked for on the preview show on Thursday. We talked about J.K. Dobbins and how he had entered Week 7 with 14 runs of 10 or more yards, which was tied for 2nd in the NFL. And we all know that just one explosive play in a singular drive makes that singular drive 10 times more likely to end in a touchdown. And limiting J.K. Dobbins in the first 3 quarters, excellent job by the New York Giants defense. We held Dobbins in check all the way until basically the last running play of the 3rd quarter where he broke off a 32-yard run. And that was also when Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo came out of the game. Now, the Giants just, during the Brian Daboll tenure, along with Mike Kafka and Joe Shane as our general manager, have just had an extremely tough time closing out games. And it's tough to really pinpoint if this is a Brian Daboll issue, a New York Giants issue, because we saw this with Joe Judge as well. I believe it was 7 one-score games with Joe Judge in that 2021 season before he ultimately ended up getting fired. And it's just hard to pinpoint. It seems like it could be a combination of all three things. Maybe it was Joe Judge, Brian Daboll, and the New York Giants are all just pathetic and don't know how to close out games. But the performance by the defense in this one is really a head-scratcher. 294 yards allowed in the fourth quarter, and they just had no answer for Bo Nix in the fourth quarter. And you got to give kudos to Sean Payton and the rest of that coaching staff over there with the Denver Broncos. This is a game that, being on our side of the coin, right, as New York Giants fans, this is going to sting. Even if we get the next week, we play the Philadelphia Eagles, and you come away with a victory, which would help the situation, this loss is still going to be lingering in the back of all of our minds. But if you are a Denver Broncos fan, on the night that you induct Demaryius Thomas into the Ring of Honor, and you have this kind of an epic fourth quarter comeback, it just instills that kind of belief in your quarterback in Bo Nix. And there were a lot of mixed opinions on Bo Nix going into this game. Even on some of the content and clips that I was posting on Giants Twitter, Broncos fans were coming in and chiming in and apologizing to Bo Nix. And it kind of reminds me of the sentiment that was surrounding Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles, before he ultimately got to win a Super Bowl. Just mixed opinions of a quarterback who is very young and going out there and getting the job done for the most part. You're walking away with victories in most of these games that Bo Nix has started. I mean, they won 10 games last season, went to the playoffs, and here they are sitting, in the driver's seat right now of the AFC West with 5 wins. But Bo Nix in the fourth quarter was basically perfect. He only had one incompletion. He went 9 for 10 for 126 yards through the air. He had the 1 touchdown through the air, also had the 2-point conversion. I mean, everything was clicking. And Bobby Okereke had this to say after the game. He said, you have a 13-play drive, a 17-play drive, a 19-play drive, or whatever it is, regardless of altitude, those drives start to weigh on you. This is the kind of game that I really don't want to hear any excuses from the defense. Bo Nix started off this game extremely shaky, but he ultimately ended up finishing 27 of 50 for 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a quarterback rating of 83.7. His 2 longest throws of the day were 31 yards and 29 yards. The first was to Denzel Mims on the right sideline with 2:14 left in the fourth quarter. That play was on Andrew Phillips. The second was a 29-yard pass to Cortland Sutton to set up the game-winning field goal. And a lot of New York Giants fans are speaking on how we dropped 8 in the coverage, and Brian Burns was seen walk into his locker complaining. And right at the end of the clip that, I can't remember who posted it, but right at the end of the clip, he is saying he's very frustrated. He's screaming, and he's saying, dropping 8, and he kind of like cuts himself off before he says something that he might regret. I wanted to bring this to y'all attention here. This was Rex Ryan, Damian Woody, and Alex Smith on the Get Up, breaking down that particular play that really saved the last drive for the Denver Broncos and allowed them to get in field goal range to capitalize and walk away with the victory in this game versus New York Giants. Check it out.
After the Giants get that touchdown from Jackson Dart, they have good coverage on the kickoff. So Denver is pinned pretty deep in their territory, and then comes this play, and we'll show it. Alex, explain to everyone what they're seeing on this play here.
I mean, listen, it's desperation, right? But you know right away, look, there's 3 down linemen, which, I mean, as a quarterback, it's drop 8. You know you're going to have a bunch of time. Look how relaxed Bo Nix is. Look at it. I mean, 5-step drop from the gun, 2 hitches. This is the best pocket he saw all day. They threw the ball 50-plus times. He never saw a pocket that looked like this, and it was on the most important play of the game.
Rex, you are one of the great defensive coaches in the history of the sport. What is that defensive philosophy, and why are they in it?
Well, it's dog poop. All right, I'm going to tell you right now. Look, this is absolutely absurd. Go get the sucker. All right? He can't. You want to limit the time that he has to throw the ball. Alex, you're right. Look at that clean pocket. What did Sean Payton do? So he's got his 5 linemen, and he has 2 chips. Why? We got to protect the quarterback to get the ball down the field. You got to be thinking the exact opposite. Of course, the difference is I'm a damn winner. I'm going to go kick your ass. I'm not going to just let you go and take it from me. They made him take it from me. And Burns, did you see him after the game?
Yeah, super frustrated.
Yeah. Absolutely, and he's right. Well, he should have said, no, man, forget it. We never heard you. We're going to come after this.
Rex, you know, the scared money doesn't make any money.
Absolutely.
And so when you have that type of front,
Why in the hell would you go to a prevent defense with 3 guys rushing the quarterback? I don't care how good your defense is. If you're giving a quarterback 3, 4 seconds to throw the ball, he's going to find somebody in your defense.
Woody, to your point, the biggest strength of the entire Giants football team are their pass rushers.
Right.
Let's be very clear. They got 4 guys that can get after the quarterback. Like, let them do what they do best. Instead, you're dropping them into coverage, right? Your back end unit isn't your featured strength. Like, this is common sense.
Right.
I mean, I think at this point, again, let these guys eat, right? You earn the right to rush the passer. We talk about it all the time. This is the opportunity right here.
That's why you pay those guys. That's why, I mean, all the capital you put in that front, now it's time to go. Close the game out. We saw Micah Parsons. We're going to show him later.
Yes.
He closed it out.
Now, I agree 100% with what was said on that panel. You have 4 first-rounders on this front for the New York Giants defensive line. You should be able to pin your ears back and go after the quarterback in a obvious passing situation there at the end of the game when the Broncos really needed to drive down the field. But I also look at the defense on those coverage plays there, and you have a lot of players around the ball not making a play on the ball. And as much as I want to point the finger at Shane Bowen today because he is absolutely responsible for a big chunk of this loss, the players got to go out there and make plays as well, and they just didn't do that. And you look at that play, they did drop 8, right? I don't know if you guys got a chance to check out the All 22 clip that I posted on the channel here right before we went live, where it was just breaking down about basically the last 2 minutes on defense from a pass coverage standpoint. And you just look at those type of plays that how the New York Giants were failing to make the plays late down the stretch, where even before that play, Shane Bowen didn't drop 8 on all the plays on the drive before that when they drove down the field just as easy as well. And I do think that they were in a bit of a juxtaposition here because they dropped 8 on the first play, but then they end up blitzing on the second play, and Bo Nix got the ball out of his hands so quickly. You basically had a 3-versus-2 type of situation, or 3-versus-3 if you include the safety situation on the left side of the field. And Bo Nix gets the ball out of his hands fast as hell, and he recognizes that the safety is so far away from Evan Ingram. On a quick out, he gets the ball out of his hands. Evan Ingram catches the ball, and we just failed to make the tackle. I mean, just poor tackling from Andrew Phillips. I wish I had the clip to show you guys, but when you get off from this stream, go check it out. It's on the channel. You'll get a chance to see it. And Evan Ingram just breaks a couple of tackles, and now you're looking at the New York Giants playing defense from about their own 43-yard line to a big 20-plus yard chunk on the play to Evan Ingram that basically set up a chip shot field goal to win the game. Now, we all know that the Giants were also in another juxtaposition by not having Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland on the field. And listen, I've been somebody that has been a big supporter of Deonte Banks, ex-Maryland Terp, and have gone to social media and told you guys about it here that I didn't want to trade Deonte Banks because the Giants need depth in a situation where possibly one of the top 2 cornerbacks in Paulson Adebo and Cordero Flott go down. You need to have the next man up be at least a viable option. Deonte Banks showed us in yesterday's game that he's not a viable option at this moment in time. And with that particular statement and tweet, I was trying to have some foresight looking into next season, to be honest. I didn't know that within 1 week we were going to be able to throw Deonte Banks out there in one of the most clutch situations to try to close out a game against the Denver Broncos and save us, from having an embarrassing loss like what we just saw in yesterday's game. Now, Cordell Flott went out there and played his ass off. He played a hell of a game. He only allowed 2 receptions on 10 targets for 19 yards. He had the highest PFF coverage grade of any New York Giants on the day. But the way that Banks came in and struggled is something that was a bit of a head-scratcher for me. And the biggest head-scratcher for me of him coming into the game is, from what I saw the majority of the time, he was lined up against the Denver Broncos wide receiver 1 in Courtland Sutton. And he was getting cooked a lot of the time. After the game, he said that he thought that only one play he really had a lapse on was where he got picked, and that was the big play on the left sideline to Courtland Sutton. But I think Deonte Banks is suffering from a lot of immaturity and a lack of self-awareness. He wasn't ready for that moment. And I think that it's because, 1, he didn't get the CB2 role on this team. 2, they removed his rotation after last week's game when we saw Cordero Flott taking basically 100% of the snaps at the cornerback 2 position. But the other thing that nobody is talking about, at least from what I'm seeing on social media, is how much of a disaster game Andrew Phillips had. You know, it just seemed like all the big plays, outside of the one play to Cortland Sutton that happened over Deonte Banks, it seemed like all the big plays were with Drew Phillips in coverage. Now, the big play on the right sideline to Marvin Mims, you know, Drew Phillips is lined up in the slot, and the Denver Broncos do a hell of a job of motioning the outside X wide receiver inside to take the slot role, which then turned the guy, Marvin Mims, that Andrew Phillips is covering into the outside X wide receiver. And that really put Andrew Phillips on an island on that last play. And I know a lot of people have been complaining about Deonte Banks not being able to get his head turned around, and that is a straight up fucking fact. There's no doubt about it. But seeing Andrew Phillips basically doing his best impersonation of Deonte Banks out there and not getting his head turned around, it's embarrassing. And it's absolutely pathetic. And then you look at how he missed a tackle on Evan Ingram and allowed, you know, basically about a good 15 to 20 more yards of yak on that play. The Giants defense just completely folded in this game. There's no doubt about it. And I know that a lot of people are going to be looking towards Shane Bowen. Obviously, he is responsible for this. This is his defense. You got to look at the players as well. You know, a lot of people have been saying that the New York Giants personnel has been performing despite the coaching staff. Well, if that's the case, these last drives towards the end of this game that put the Denver Broncos up on the scoreboard, if the personnel is that good, in my opinion, in this particular instance where you allowed the Denver Broncos to score 33 points in the fourth quarter, you're just as much at fault. And I just don't know where to move forward after this game. You know, our defense is supposed to be the backbone unit for the New York Giants, and it just seems like in these big moments, if it's not the defense, it's going to be the offense. We saw it in the Saints game. And I talked about this on Bleacher Report after the game. When you look at the first 7 weeks of the New York Giants season, to compile the 6 straight turnovers against the Saints, come back, beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and then 1 week later you allow this historic performance from the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter to allow them to score 33 points and beat you in the fourth quarter. Those two things happening in one season, I think let us know all we need to know about where the New York Giants are going for the rest of the 2025 season. And honestly, in my opinion, they're not going anywhere. Let's tap in with the chat. I definitely want to get these super chats out the way. We'll go over Jackson Dart's numbers, and then I got 2 Giant overreactions to go over. I might pull an old Giant overreaction from just a week ago because, like I said, if you're familiar with the Jay-Z 2-shirt record, it definitely was all good just a week ago. Shout out to my dog, Independent Outsider, Dave Denton with the $20 super chat. He said, Giants coaching and general staff are wasting these kids' talent. He says, if you can't sign a kicker that can kick Pats, you may want to find another job. A waste of Dart, Flott, Belton, Burns, future bright, not with Bowen. Yeah, Shane Bowen, you know, I tweeted this out after the game. I said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on Bowen. Because y'all know I don't come up here and call for people's jobs because I don't know the total of what is going on in that locker room, in that front office with this organization. But you got to hold somebody accountable. And for the people that are, you know, like Dave Denton asking for Bowen to be gone and the future is not bright without him, I definitely understand it. And the 3 weeks work or the 3 weeks worth of work is all for nothing now. It's really all for nothing because we can't look at this with any optimism. This is 2 times in the season we've seen this defense basically have a grand opportunity to close out a game, and in this game against the Denver Broncos multiple times, and not find a way to do it. So definitely understand the sentiment here. Not having a kicker that can just make extra points is absolutely fucking ridiculous in my opinion. And, you know, Brian Dable and the rest of the coaching staff can't account for this kid, Jude, going out there and missing these kicks, but I don't know what's going on in practice. I don't know if it, you know, maybe it is the bright lights, right? Because when you're in practice, not a lot of people watching. Maybe he's making the kicks and maybe he's giving them, you know, the just the encouragement to be able to wheel him out there on game day. But we're now talking about back-to-back games where New York Giants kicker has missed an extra point. That's just unacceptable on the professional level. It's unacceptable. Shout out to my dog B-Rog one time in the building with the $5 super chat. Both of these super chats came in before we went live. So, man, big salute to y'all. I definitely appreciate that. B-Rog said, not loving this loss, but I'm going to stay positive. These players will learn and grow. The rookies are showing so much promise, and the offensive line played great. I do agree with that. And, you know, on a day like today, I can't come up here and shoot down the optimism, right? And I do think we're going to have two sides of the coin from the fan base. You're going to have people that are very optimistic like B-Rog is here, and then you're going to have people that are just very, very, very pessimistic after that. You know, the people who wanted these coaches fired, that's going to be that last straw to break the camel's back, and they're going to double down on that. And for me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm still processing this loss. I can't even lie. I wish I had another 5 days to go over the tape and go over every bit of content and every opinion that I could find before I could go live today, but felt like that would be a bit irresponsible to you guys. And you know, with a loss like this, it's going to be such a slow week for all of us that, you know, I almost feel like I have an extra emphasis on the duty to be able to come up here and go live and help this week fly by, not only for you guys, but also help it fly by for me so that we can get to Sunday and have just another opportunity to go out there and get a W. But, man, I do commend my dogs like B-Rog that are out here with the optimism, because for me, this is just demoralizing. It's devastating. It's embarrassing. And today, you know, this is not one of those days where if I go to the grocery store, I'm going to be rocking some New York Giants apparel. It's just today I'm not proud to be a New York Giants fan because of the way that team just allowed the Denver Broncos to come back and win that game. But shout out to B-Rog, man. We appreciate you helping us raise the bar. Shout out to my dog, David Perrodine, in the building one time, man. We appreciate you coming in with the $10 super chat. He said, man, it's coaching. Getting one more corner or wide receiver won't solve for inevitable injuries. We saw what not having depth across the roster will produce. Very lucky Wan'Dale was healthy last week versus the Eagles. Absolutely, and he definitely had a day. Wan'Dale was a big part of the performance from the offense in this particular game against the Broncos as well. I do agree that coaching is definitely getting in the way of victories here. More importantly, I agree with your sentiment on the wide receiver trying to bring in a corner this year in a bit of a panic move with a team that is now sitting at 2-5. I didn't think it made sense when we were sitting at 2-4. And unless it was going to be the right player that the Giants would trade for, I thought that going in the direction of trying to elevate somebody from the practice squad or, bringing somebody in via free agency was probably the better move. But totally agree with David here. There's no pushback on this comment here. And I think David is spot on here, man. We appreciate you helping us raise the bar one time. Shout out to my dog, Timmy Foosball, in the building, man. We were chopping it up in the DM just before I went live. He said, I wish I could stay as calm as you. I'm still livid. And, I'm calm today, but my neighbors are definitely, looking at me like that guy's a fucking crazy person, because in real time when it was all going down, the roller coaster of emotions, and I was in here watching the game by myself, thank God, because if I was going through that type of emotional instability in front of people, I would absolutely be embarrassed. I mean, I was jumping around. But I will tell you this, though. I'm glad to have that back, because last year, the year before that even, you weren't going to see me jumping out of my seat for nothing happening with the New York Giants. And with the new energy, from the quarterback and from a lot of the young guys on this roster, they've brought me back into that, and they've reeled me back into my fandom, and I do commend them for that. But when you lose like this, man, it took me back to a time when I used to be screaming at my television so much. I got two cats that live in here, and, man, they were just looking at us like, what is going on? Even my girl upstairs screaming as well. And just a tough loss, in the heat of the moment, right before I went on live, right after the game on Bleacher Report. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I didn't know how to start it because, as I'm doing those preparation and getting my notes together for the Bleacher Report streams, you're almost feeding off the flow of the game. So if I feel like through the first 2 to 3 quarters, the New York Giants are headed towards a loss, I'm trying to prepare the fan base on Bleacher Report, for that type of a stream and that perspective, more importantly. And with this game, I did that through the first 3 quarters. And then as we got to the fourth quarter, it was like, oh, man, we're losing this game. Oh, man, here we go. We just got a Hail Mary shot and got a pass interference call that knocked us down to the 1-yard line. We punch it in. I'm like, all right, now I got to kind of change the vibe and the perspective and the approach of the stream. And then a couple of minutes later, I'm looking at the Denver Broncos drive down the field in just 2, 3, maybe 4 plays and kicking the game-winning field goal. And I started off that stream by just saying, like, I don't even know where to start. It just a backbreaker of a loss for the fan base. And I feel sorry for the players. And, you saw Dexter Lawrence, right? Like, go in front of the media and basically say, like, look, he stared right into the fucking camera. And when I stream here, I'm looking down at a screen. If I were to look into the camera, it'd be right up here. But Dexter Lawrence looked dead at us in the camera and said, it's the same people, it's the same calls. He was trying to not really throw anybody under the bus, but at the same time, just giving people a little bit of insinuation about what's really going on. I understand the players are frustrated. The players are likely more frustrated than the fans are. Like, you ever been a part of a loss like this, on a football team or on any sports team? When you walk back to your locker room or back to the car or wherever the fuck you're going, the conversations that are being had are straight up emotional conversations. And I do think that we saw the emotions from Brian Burns. We saw the emotions from Dexter Lawrence. And a lot of people are pointing the finger at Dexter Lawrence saying, oh, well, this guy hasn't showed up all season long. I don't care if he is getting double teamed. It don't matter. I understand these guys are human. It don't matter how much money you are being paid. The human characteristics are going to creep to the surface no matter what. And although I thought it was a bit unprofessional from Dexter Lawrence, I don't fault him. I don't fault him at all, because there's no way you should go out there and lose that game the way that this New York Giants defense did. But today, I guess I'm a little bit calm, and I think that kind of speaks to just trying to remain as professional as I can up here on this podcast that we preach raising the bar. And, I think on a day like today where the Giants fan base is down, I mean, as down as we can possibly be, they're not going to want to tune in and come see me up here screaming and being emotional. So, yeah, man, I'm trying, man. It's tough. I told my boy yesterday when we were talking after the game, like, it feels like somebody died, man. Like, and I don't want to like overreact on a giant overreaction, but the reason why I say that is, like, when I'm a troubleshooter. I'm a problem solver by day. And when I wake up and I don't have a problem to solve, it's an issue for me, whether it be within engineering or something I'm dealing with my camera or an edit that I'm working on or document, whatever it is. I'm always solving a problem, whether it be for myself or whether it be for a client. And I pride myself on being able to basically get out of any situation that I put myself into or a client puts themselves into, and being able to leave that situation with the results. And the reason why I say it feels like somebody died is when somebody passes away, there's no coming back from that. And this loss just feels like that. It just feels like it don't matter how much tape I look at. It don't matter how many shows I look at. It don't matter any approach that I have to try to find some kind of a, just something positive from this game. When I'm just chilling, those thoughts are creeping into my mind, and I'm like, damn, I can't shake it. I really just can't shake it. And it's unfortunate, and we got to deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, who we just beat on Thursday night 2 weeks ago on Sunday. And I'm not feeling good going into that game. I mean, what are the odds that the New York Giants are going to go out here in the 2025 season that has been rough, to say the least, and sweep the Philadelphia Eagles? Right now, I don't see a path for a victory. And you compile that with this loss against the Denver Broncos, we're fucked, man. We're basically fucked. Shout out to my dog, Concepcion, in the building one time, man. Just dropping in with the 99-cent donation. We appreciate you, brother, helping us raise the bar, man. We also got Cortez in the building here with the 199 super chat. He says, Debo and Holland go out equal instant switch to soft zone. It wasn't the case on all the plays. I did go back, and I encourage you to check out just that little clip I posted, 2 minutes of the last couple of pass plays on the last 2 drives. Really, it was the first play of the last drive where you saw the soft zone, and it was the most costly. It was definitely the most costly. You allowed them to get their biggest gain of the day literally in the last minutes of the game to put them in position to kick that field goal to win the game. So, yeah, you saw Debo and Holland go out, and the results just completely just diminished from that point on. And I didn't even think Paulson Adebo was having that great of a game before, but he was having at least a serviceable enough game for us to be able to manage on defense. And, you know, with the pressure we were getting on the quarterback and the way we were stopping the run early on in the first half, that would have been enough to basically coast to a victory. And instead, I mean, just our luck, right? Holland goes out, then Adebo goes out like a couple of plays later. Just our luck, man. It's really unfortunate. Let me see. Timmy Foosball coming in hot one more time with a $2 super chat here. He says, my podcast would be called Lowering the Bar. I feel you, bro. I feel you, man. It's tough, man. It's tough right now. And I definitely feel for all the New York Giants fans across the entire globe, man. Like, this one is just going to kick our ass for who knows, man. This one might hurt for the entire season. But this is definitely a loss we're never going to forget. Never going to forget this one. But shout out Timmy Foosball for helping us not lower the bar, but helping us raise the bar one time. Big shout out to B-Rog one time with the $20 super chat. B-Rog says, in the past, a coach would have been gone. In my mind, this is lack of defense, execution, and lack of a kicking or a kicker. Heads should have rolled. Send a message, bench, cut, and let go those, let me scroll down here, that don't produce. Brian Daboll needs to raise the bar. Damn, I know that's true. I ain't even thought about that, but that's a fact. Brian Daboll absolutely needs to raise the bar. And I don't question his effort. You know, we're going to talk about some of the mistakes that happened with Brian Daboll in this game, but man, if you didn't recognize a head coach in that game fighting not only for his NFL livelihood, but just fighting his ass off to try to walk away with the victory in that game. If there was anybody that I thought put out maximum effort in this game, it was Jackson Dart, Brian Burns, and Brian Daboll. The rest of the guys out there, I can't say the same for them. And, you know, that goes with saying Brian Daboll absolutely made some mistakes in this game, some situational, decisions by the New York Giants that you got to place on behalf of the head coach. Those definitely go on Brian Daboll. But damn, to see him lose this game and then watch him go up to the podium, the polar opposite of the emotions that would have been surrounding this fan base had we have won that game. And the perception of Brian Daboll would have literally been a 180-degree difference. And for that, I do feel for Brian Daboll today. I know he's paid handsomely to get the job done and get the results for the New York Giants, and he has not done that. But damn, that dude was out there trying to battle. And I felt like he was in a lot of situations that were damned if you do and damned if you don't. And same thing kind of goes for Shane Bowen. But you just cannot have your defense go out there and allow 33 points in the fourth quarter. I don't care who's out there playing as far as personnel goes. I don't care who's out there coaching the defense. That is absolutely unacceptable. And that was the kind of miracle that it was going to take for the Giants to lose that game and for the Broncos to win that game. And, Broncos' prayers were definitely answered for sure. Definitely answered. I want to talk about Jackson Dart just a little bit here and the performance that he put forth. And I know I did not have these graphics ready, so let me just get this one time ready for you guys here. There we go. So, and let me take this off real quick so that I don't interrupt y'all. I thought Jackson Dart did more than enough to win this game. You look at his performance against the Broncos and the completion percentage, not all that great. A lot of the damage was done in the fourth quarter, just basically throwing Hail Marys out there to try to find a way to get some plays down the field and get his team in position to get the lead back. He ended the day 15 of 33 for 283 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, a 93.4 quarterback rating, 11 rushing yards on the day. And he was sacked 4 times. And big shout out to this offensive line. I mean, they performed extremely well. You look at the PFF grades, and I always tell you guys a decisive quarterback is an offensive lineman's best friend, and not to worry about this New York Giants offensive line, at least from a pass pro perspective. And they're proving that with Jackson Dart at the quarterback position. But I thought the offense did enough to win this game. Outside of the critical mistake, the Giants offense scored 32 points. And this is the crazy part about the Giants offense. They've averaged 26.7 points per game over the last 3 games. That's top 10 in the NFL right now. That's 7th best in the NFL. And Dart led the Giants to a 19-0 lead entering the fourth quarter. Man, that should be enough for you to just be able to go out there and just run the damn ball in the fourth quarter and find a way to close the game out. And for some reason in this one, it just wasn't enough for the New York Giants. It was the first game of the season where Jackson Dart did not rush for at least 50 yards. He had 3 straight games as a starter, and he was one of 3 quarterbacks to ever do that. It was him, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson actually did it for 5 games, which is an NFL record for any quarterback starting his career. And Jackson Dart gets capped off at 3 games. He leaves this game with just 11 rushing yards. And this offense has took a major turn since Jackson Dart has taken over. The Giants have the 5th most efficient red zone offense in the entire National Football League since Jackson Dart took over. And we're talking about a team that was sitting at 32nd in the NFL through the first 3 games with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position. I'm going to try to remember these numbers off the top of my head, and I think they're accurate. Russell Wilson was 4 of 20 for 16 yards in those first 3 games in the red zone. Jackson Dart has definitely injected some life into this New York Giants offense, this New York Giants team, and this New York Giants fan base. And he is basically the sole reason why we were still alive entering this game against the Denver Broncos yesterday. In his first 4 starts, Jackson Dart has 791 passing yards, 7 touchdowns through the air, 3 interceptions, 168 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Jackson Dart is the first quarterback through his first 4 starts in NFL history with those type of numbers. At least 790 passing yards, 165 or more rushing yards, 7 or more passing touchdowns, and 3 or more rushing touchdowns. No quarterback has ever done that. I commended the creativity on this New York Giants offense entering the game. I loved what Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka have been doing as of late with the 12 and 13 personnel, featuring 2 tight end sets within this offense. I mean, you look at this game against the Denver Broncos, and Wan'Dale Robinson was the only wide receiver in the entire game to catch a pass for the New York Giants. You only had 4 pass catchers receive a reception in this entire game. 2 tight ends and a running back. And Wan'Dale Robinson, with the top 2 dogs in the wide receiver unit out, is just continuing to produce. And I thought he did a good job in this game. And I like the creativity that I saw in the first 3 quarters from Brian Daboll and from Mike Kafka. A lot of misdirection, a lot of pre-snap motion, and just finding ways to create without really having the true personnel out there. And you got to give Jackson Dart his props on that as well. Bellinger had 88 yards in this game, all in the first half. And the Giants could not find a way to get him the ball in the second half. I'm not too sure why that was. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at the entirety of the game from the all-22 perspective. I did look at the last quarter, and I'm looking forward to checking that out, at the conclusion of this stream. But as a head coach, Brian Daboll is not just responsible for the offense. I could completely relinquish blame from Brian Daboll in this game if he was the offensive coordinator. But that's not the case. Brian Daboll is the head coach, so you are responsible for what the defense does as well. I don't care if you are just an offensive-minded coach. But you're also responsible for putting your quarterback in the best position to succeed. And I thought that Brian Daboll did a good job of that throughout the entirety of the game, except the last 5 minutes of the game. Jackson Dart's worst play of the game came with 4:56 left in the game. The Giants called 2 running plays to force Denver to use 2 of their last 3 timeouts. And then on 3rd and 5, Jackson Dart dropped back to pass and ends up throwing an interception right to the linebacker. And I'm not saying that Brian Daboll is at fault for Jackson Dart throwing the interception. And I'm also not my opinion is not as strong about running the ball on 3rd down there and forcing them to use the timeout. I do agree that would have been the right decision, but if Jackson Dart could have found a way to make the right decision, and some of this falls on the behalf of Brian Daboll as well, you need to be in your quarterback's ear telling him that the only way you throw this ball is if it's wide open. And if it's not, use your legs and try to get the first down. Instead, Jackson Dart tried to make a throw across the middle. Ball gets picked off. The Broncos returned it all the way back to the Giants' 19-yard line, and that was exactly what Denver needed to get back in the game. In my opinion, that game was basically out of reach, even if the New York Giants get an incompletion on that third down and are forced to punt the ball. I don't foresee the Denver Broncos driving down the field 2 times, down by 10 points in the final 4 minutes of the game and winning this game with 1 timeout left. And after the game, Jackson Dart said, I can't do that. We were in full control of that game. In that situation, you can't do that. That was an unacceptable mistake by me. Now, I want to play you guys a take from Tiki Barber on WFAN breaking down the last portion of this game offensively for the New York Giants and speaking on the interception from Jackson Dart and how Brian Daboll cannot put his quarterback in this type of position. Check it out. Play it.
I don't understand it in any capacity. Offensive, defensive, and special teams failure, and I'll throw in for good measure a coaching failure for this team, and it's why you lose on the road to the Denver Broncos in a game that you controlled from the very beginning until just under 2 minutes to go when you gave up the lead for the very first time. There's only one play that sits in my craw and makes me scream and yell at the top of my lungs, and I don't do that regularly, John. You know this. I'm a composed, conservative.
I've never seen you this
talking. I talk through the issues that I see, but as I was always told, call it like you see it. So with 5 minutes and 13 seconds to go in this game, Bo Nix scrambles for a touchdown, making it 26-16. The Giants have a 10-point lead. Read that as 2-possession lead. There's about just under 5 minutes left to go when they get the football. And the Denver Broncos have 3 timeouts remaining. The only thing you have to do on that drive is get them to use all 3 of your timeouts and not turn the football over. And so on first down, you run the ball as you're supposed to with Cam Scatterbo. You get a couple of yards. On second down, you run the ball with Cam Scatterbo. You get a few more yards. So it's 3rd and 4 or 5 or whatever it was. It doesn't even matter. And Sean Payton has used 2 of those timeouts. On that third down, the only play that you call, and I don't know if this is Mike Kafka trying to be cute. I don't know if this is Brian Daboll trying to be aggressive. I don't know if this is Jackson Dart trying to be a hero. The only thing you do on that play is run the ball so that you force the Denver Broncos to use a 3rd timeout. And people might say, why? You give them a ball back. It gives them a chance to go back and score. You had possessions to play with, right? You had 1 possession to play with. They're down by 2 possessions, 10 points. They have to possess the ball 2 times. If you make them call that last timeout, you pump in the ball. They have to drive the length of the field with 4 or so minutes left in the game. It's going to use a significant portion of the clock. Then you're going to get the ball back. And then now all you need is a first down.
Unless you give up a big play there, Tiki.
Okay, but
the only way they'll know
have they given up a big play at any point in the game at that point? The answer is no.
The Broncos would have had to recover an onside kick to win the game.
Exactly.
Correct. I'm agreeing with you.
And the likelihood of that is so small that you take the risk. But the only thing, this game was lost, and you heard me scream it, as soon as they decided to put the ball in a rookie's hand. This is why I always distrust rookies in moments, because they make stupid rookie decisions, like throwing the ball over the middle of the field in a simulated blitz when the linebacker's actually dropping into coverage and you don't see them and you think you have a big play, but you don't. This is on the play call, period. The only thing you do is force the Denver Broncos to use 3 timeouts, keep the clock running, and punt the ball away. It's an inexcusable play call. I don't understand it in any capacity.
Yo, so as the audio dropped out, my girl was like, the chat is mad. Then I look at the chat and I see y'all going ballistic about not being able to hear the audio. But yeah, I mean, I think Tiki Barber's spot on. I really do think he's spot on here. Like, the right decision to make there is to run the ball 3 times. Just make it easy. Why are we trying to, like, get cute? Maybe Mike Kafka, as Tiki Barber alluded to there, or maybe Jackson Dart trying to play hero ball. We won't know truly what ended up happening in that huddle or in the headset with Jackson Dart and Brian Daboll.
Offensive, defensive, and special teams failure. And although
it was that to me, that is a momentum changer where if you just take what's there and you run the ball on 3rd down, you force them to burn their last time out. And granted, a lot of points got scored after that. And it wasn't truly the one deciding factor in this game. I still think that Brian Daboll is getting in his own way by allowing his quarterback to throw the ball there. And what I was saying before the audio had knocked out was that there was somebody on Twitter, his name's Incarcerated Bob, and he said this. He said, A jackass coach put a rookie in a spot to make a game-changing mistake. You have coaches for a reason, especially when you have a lead and a rookie quarterback to look after. Dart made that huge error, didn't sulk, got right back on the field and delivered. That's big time in the NFL when you're a rookie quarterback or when your rookie quarterback is on the road and can brush that off and put his team on his back. The clutch gene cannot be taught. And I do 100% agree with that. And it's just unfortunate that in this last few sequences of the game, everything that could go wrong for the New York Giants, it absolutely did go wrong. There was a comment that somebody said up here. Your brother Hell said, I translated what you said in ASL authentic. You're welcome, no charge. And somebody else had another funny one too. They were talking about Brian Dable. You know, at least authentic can correct the audio issues within minutes. But if that was Brian Dable, he wouldn't get it done. And that is a fact, man. And it's just unfortunate that, you know, in this game that it went down like that. But can't sulk in this L, you know, for too long. I think we got 6 more days to really speak on this type of a game and the lackluster performance in the fourth quarter. But I'm not going to keep y'all here for too long. I'm going to go over 2 Giant overreactions as well. But let's tap in with the Super Chats before we get there real quick because I did see a couple more came in. First from SHU Carter talking about the audio went out. We apologize for that. Big shout out to SHU Carter for helping us raise the bar over here when the audio goes out. Shout out to the audio department in a negative way on this one. Shout out my dog Wade one time with the $4.99 Super Chat. He said, I hate how hard we got chin checked yesterday. We got to tighten up for Sunday. Not too optimistic, but damn, hope this doesn't truly derail us. It's going to be a tough one, man. I do think that this is there's almost no coming back for the rest of the season after a loss like that and the way that we lost to the New Orleans Saints. But, you know, that's why they go out there and they play the games. But we shall see, man. Appreciate you helping us raise the bar, Hyphen. And Hyphen Wade had another one here, $9.99 one time. He said, it's like I can't escape you. My college team has a hit or miss defense, and my pro team can't cover a broken bed. We played a game yesterday, but we got to get to it. Secondary and all, I'm hurt. Yeah, bro, it's just one of those losses that's going to linger, man, and it's nothing we could really do about it, man. And I hate when things are out of our control like that, and, you know, you just got to just deal with it, and it's just totally unfortunate. But, you know, hopefully the Giants can get back on track and maybe win a couple more miracle games and maybe put us in position to compete down the stretch. But we're going to talk about that here in these Giant overreactions in a second. Shout out to Hyphen Wade for helping us raise the bar. Big shout out to Cortez with the $4.99 Super Chat. He said, Bowen is on his last legs with Dable. It was reported he was screaming at Bowen. His statement about the staff will change if the Eagles hang 50 on us. That's true. You know, we had talked about Rand Carton, who just a week ago, entering the Philadelphia Eagles game, had said that for now, Brian Dable is safe. And it's crazy how week to week things can change. I thought that Brian Dable being safe was going to be something that was going to last at least for 4 to 5 weeks, right? And same thing for Shane Bowen. And here we are just 1 week later, you know, with the what can go wrong, will go wrong type of moniker. The Giants put themselves in a position where I'm sure everyone in that front office is contemplating and considering and thinking about their livelihoods and know that, you know, their fate of possibly being fired is something that could be right around the corner. That's a damn fact right there. Shout out to Cortez, man. We appreciate you helping us raise the bar. Shout out to, let me see how this is. Okay. So it's S3XI Dexy. I see where you're going with that. I don't, my masculinity cannot allow me to call him that, but shout out to my dog Dexy in the building one time with the $4.99 Super Chat. This hurts, man. This hurts. He says, I was at the game. Damn, that's the kind of shit that I would never go back, bro. On the road, oh my God. Says, I was at the game, huge disappointment. You could see after the deep completion by Bo and offsides by Kayvon, the defense put their heads down. Huge shame. Man, I'm feeling for you, bro. Like, that was a tough loss for me just watching the game here at the crib. If I had to gear up, get all my shit together, and, okay, I'm just making sure of something here. If I had to gear up and get all my shit together and go to that game and have to be there and witness that excruciating loss. I really would never go back, bro. And that's tough, man. That's a tough one to be at. Definitely feeling for you. I appreciate you helping us raise the bar, man. There's nothing to add to that statement right there, bro. That's just tough right there, man. That's just tough. Shout out to my dog Dexy, though, helping us raise the bar over here on Authentic in the Beard. Shout out to J Tech one time in the building with the $2 super chat. He said, we need a change if we're on a 10 road game losing streak. Yeah, we do. We do. I agree with you on that, man. It's not easy being a New York Giants fan right now, and I can't imagine it's easy being the New York Giants owner right now either. Dealing with cancer, all of that, it's going to be tough to fire somebody in the middle of the season, and I think that a lot of those firings are going to happen likely at the end of the season if they do happen at all. But a 10-game road losing streak is not a good look, man. It's not a good look. And let me think. Let me actually look at the schedule real quick because the game coming up against the Eagles, I believe that one's on the road, right? Yeah. Where we have not beaten the Eagles since 2013. So we're going to need a little bit of luck on our side, man. But big shout out J-Tech helping us raise the bar. Let me just make sure I got them all here. We got another one from Cruzan26 in the building one time, coming in with the $5 super chat. He said, prior to Adebo getting hurt, the Broncos had 0 points. All 33 points was scored when Banks was on the field. I don't trust him. I don't trust Banks either, but I do think that we can't go without talking about the rest of the secondary in that situation as well, too, especially with Andrew Phillips, man. You could argue that Andrew Phillips looked worse than Deonte Banks did on that final sequence of plays there with the New York Giants. It was all bad. And, these are the type of things that really brought me back to last season and why we addressed bringing in another cornerback, because we saw in 2024 how poor that unit was. And Paulson Adebo definitely aids the unit. I think his value was shown in yesterday's game because not to say that Paulson Adebo has played the cornerback position to, at a very, very, very high level, but it just goes to show you that we don't have the bodies there in that room, and the Giants are going to have to find ways to address that moving forward. But it's unfortunate, man. 33 points when Adebo and Holland went out the game is just, oof. It's just, can't believe we got to deal with that. Cannot believe we got to deal with that. And we got another one from John here one time. Big shout out to John with the $5 super chat. He says, in the words of Leak, I was not expecting us to lose because of a kicker. The guy doesn't even do kickoffs. He literally has one job, field goals. Scratching my head. Yeah, man. And he, the crazy part is that the kicker should have been able to go up there and miss 2 extra points, and we still should have been able to coast to a victory in that game. And unfortunately, we couldn't do that. But big shout out to John, man. We appreciate you helping us raise the bar over here. Wyatt Earp said, run, timeout, run, not pass. Yeah, I feel you, brother. I definitely feel you on that. That's a fact, man. And they just failed, man. And, in being put in that situation where they're in the pot and it's boiling, they didn't know how to handle the job. They just didn't know how to handle it. James Kent says, I'm going to take that as get a fucking kicker. Yeah, facts. Genesis said, couldn't get his head turned, wasn't running his fastest, like he wasn't trying in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it was bad. Sebastian said Drew Phillips is very inconsistent. At times he's great, and there are times he's just horrible. And I do agree with this. Like, he's very boom or bust. And this is why I always tell and encourage fans to just tame your expectations when we talk about deeming a draft class as a hit or a miss. Because a year ago, a lot of people were looking at that 2024 draft class as a complete hit. And now, we're just, 7 games through 2025, and there are a lot of question marks surrounding that draft class. So just keep that in mind, man. Time. You need time to be able to evaluate and assess what these players can bring forward for the New York Giants. A lot of spot-on takes here from the chat today, man, most definitely. Berg's coming in with the super chat for $1.99. Berg said Dart is certifiably the future. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I thought that before he even started one game for the New York Giants. I felt that Dart was absolutely the future. And I thought he possessed the goods to be able to do that, And he's a very capable quarterback. And a win like that, an impressive victory, like just imagine how we would be feeling today on a Giant overreaction talking about Jackson Dart going out there and beating the Philadelphia Eagles last week and then going out here and beating the Denver Broncos, who basically have the number one defense in the entire league. And instead, we got to talk about this devastating loss. It's unfortunate, man. Let me see. Toxic Tom says the Browns have been draft day winners for years. Yep. That's why you cannot assess it in real time. You really cannot. Bobby Banks said, chat, I want to specify I had the name Banks before I knew about Banks, so don't hate me, guys. Nah, it's all love, man. Shout out to Bobby one time in the building. Intuition says, I'm heartbroken, bro. I am too. Yeah, it was a difficult loss, man. MK5VW said, got to get Dart another weapon. Unacceptable that Wandale is the only wide receiver getting yards. It truly is. Cortez coming in hot with the $4.99 super chat says, isn't Jude the same kicker who missed all the field goals versus the Bengals last year? We should have found a viable option last year. Gano needs to be cut. Yeah, and Gano taking up a lot of money. And, there was a lot of just excitement. I won't say hype, but there was a lot of excitement when the Giants went out there and they signed Young Ho Koo. And, to not see him on the field is just – it's unfortunate when you got this guy Jude going out there and just missing extra points. It's just, it's just not a good vibe. Lou Mateo coming in one time with the $2 super chat. Y'all dropping them. Lou Mateo said, effing Ray Finkel, LOL. Man, I just watched that movie the other day. I actually passed out towards the end, but man, Ray Finkel, at least he had an excuse, right? Laces out, Dan. Laces out. In this situation, Jude has really no excuse, man. But very, very unfortunate L for the Giants, man. Very unfortunate. Shout out to Lou Mateo for helping us raise the bar, along with Jay Goody in the building as well, coming in with the $5 super chat. He says, makes it hurt even more when Daniel Jones is balling in Indy. For me, it's just, man, I can't even worry about Daniel Jones. We have so many issues of our own over here in New York. It's just, shout out to Daniel Jones playing some good ball, beat a good Chargers team. I guess a good team. I mean, damn, the Chargers have lost a couple of games in a row here, man. But, yeah, definitely an impressive victory from Daniel Jones. But I don't know. The Daniel Jones part it's not even I don't even factor it in, to be honest. It's just losing like that, man. 33 points in the fourth quarter is just devastating. Very devastating. Shout out Jay Goody helping us raise the bar. Independent Outsider coming in with the $2 super chat says, what needs to happen to get a road win? Not blow a 33 or not blow a fourth quarter lead where you allow the opposing team to score 33 points in the fourth quarter. Don't turn the ball over 5 times, 6 times in a row. Those kind of things, And, I want to give a little bit of leadway and say, oh, we got a rookie quarterback and all that stuff. But even for a rookie quarterback and a rookie running back and all the youth that we have on this roster, all of that is still unacceptable. It's just all unacceptable. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says, fuck DJ. He ain't a Giants. I'm with you, bro. He ain't a Giant. He is not a Giant. That is a fact. Yeah, I won't go there. I bleed NY Blue 23 said, I'm so tired of waiting for next year. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm going to try to remain patient, but the New York Giants are absolutely testing my patience. And C-Rob said, unless Daniel Jones was playing defense, don't really see how he would have helped us. That's true. That's very true. Heck, your boys in the building says, I don't care about DJ with Dart in the picture now. Just need the coaches to learn from their mistakes. News says McCarthy as head coach and Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator. I wouldn't be mad at it. I'm okay with it. Welvin said Tyler Nubin does not get enough hate. I do agree on that. He has not been playing well either. The Illa said Aronde Gadsden tore it up yesterday for the Chargers. One of my homies who's not even like a avid football watcher, but he does play a lot of fantasy football, hit me up and he said, hey, I saw in the league you're looking for a tight end. I'd signed Evan Ingram to my fantasy team. And then he was like, yo, man, you need to look into Aronde Gadsden. You know about him? And I was like, oh, yeah, out of Syracuse. I remember him, Jackson Meeks were definitely balling out with Kyle McCord over there. And I was like, okay. So I scooped him up, but I kept him on the bench. But he definitely had a big game. Last I checked, he had like 15 fantasy points. But Gadsden is a guy. He's kind of like a hybrid wide receiver, tight end type of guy. Kind of reminds me of Darren Waller a little bit. Shout out to John with the $10 super chat. And then we'll get to the Giant overreactions here. John says, I believe we found our quarterback. He is going to keep us in every game. The offensive line looks decent. Andrew Thomas made Denver put out an Amber Alert on Bonito. That's the only positives I can think of. Definitely needs to contain better. Absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, those were positives. And like I said before, it's going to be very tough to look at this game from any type of positive outlook, but there were some positives. Not closing out this game is what people are going to really harp on, and this is a results-based business, y'all. So you got to go out there and get the results, man. The moral victories ain't it. But shout out to John helping us raise the bar over here on Authentic in the Beard. Ooh, we got another person that was at the game. Derek Garcia Art says, I was at Mile High yesterday, my first time being at a Giants game. Damn. The first game, said being the only Giants fan in my row, seen a lot of fans leaving early, and I told the guy next to me, when playing NYG, it ain't over. Damn, I'm glad I saw that, man. That's a fact. First Giants game, man, I'm going to pray for you, Derek. That's very tough, bro. That's very tough. Shout out to Red Rum 22 with the $4.99 super chat. He says, is this worse than the Joe, I want to say Pasarkic fumble miracle in the Meadowlands? I'm still fucking numb. This one's tough, and I heard a lot of my OGs talking about this particular game and, talking about that. I actually heard my homie Ask talking about this, and he was saying, like, maybe this is the best thing that could have happened to the New York Giants because that fumble supposedly, like, is what led the Giants down a road that allowed us to bring in a new general manager, new coach, all of that. And a lot of people are looking at this like glass half full, like maybe we needed this. And, this is the inevitable fate of Brian Daboll and the rest of his coaching staff. And that, if this doesn't happen, maybe the coaching staff gets extended and, we stay in this purgatory that we have been in over the last however long we've been in it for even longer. So maybe. I'm still numb too, man. It's like I've never had a loss like hurt like this during our podcast era. Like even the playoff loss in 2022 to the Philadelphia Eagles, the game was over before you blinked. Like I remember getting into the bar, sitting down, getting my first beer, and the New York Giants were down by like 21 points already. This one, it's such a play action to the fan base of like, man, we're headed towards what is going to be an even bigger victory than what we got against the Philadelphia Eagles a week ago. And then all just stripped from us within one quarter. Terrible. Very terrible, man. But shout out to Red Rum, man. I appreciate you helping us raise the bar over here. The super chats just keep coming in, man. Y'all don't have to do this after a loss like this. Shout out to Ralph Fletch with the $4.99 super chat. He said the offense could have done a better job of killing the clock, but I think for the weapons we have and the pressure Denver applied, Dart played well. And I do agree. I mean, a lot of people are overlooking what personnel right now is available to this offense. Like, it's not good. It's dog shit, right? You really just got Jackson Dart, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Cam Scatterbo. And that's really it. Our offensive line is playing serviceable. You got to give them their props. But from a weapon standpoint, we don't really have anywhere that we can reliably go with the ball. Like you don't have any wide receiver that we can just line up and, hey, let's run a bubble screen out there. We're going to pick up 5. So it almost seems like every positive play that the New York Giants get, they're having to find a way to just overly scheme things open. And it's just, it would have been a hell of a performance if they could have walked away with the victory. But, for us, it's unfortunate that, the way it all panned out, we couldn't get that win. But I do agree the offense could have done a better job killing the clock, that's for sure. But all in all, I thought the offense did a pretty decent job of putting the defense in position to go out there and win the game. And the defense just couldn't handle business. Tough shit for us, though. Definitely tough for us. All right, so we got those super chats out the way. This is from New Jersey Justin. I kind of just like this. He said, our GM doesn't give us a kicker. How is he supposed to be confident and kick? It's tough, man. And they like I said, they probably thought that, seeing him in practice, he's making kicks. He looks like he's the better option than Young Hoku. And then you put him in front of them bright lights, man, and he's shitting bricks up there and he don't know what to do. BK Fire said, I'm so sick of this coaching staff. All we had to do was run the ball. We was up by 10. Why put Dart in that situation? It's an easy win, idiots. Yeah. It was a tough situation that they put him in for sure. And the tough situation compounded into Jackson Dart making one of the most egregious mistakes I've seen him make all year. You know, the fumble against the Saints is like, okay, the ball slipped out of your hand. With this one, you know the situation. And I'm going to bring this up real quick. I ain't going to talk about it too long, but just think back to Daniel Jones and his rookie season with the New York Giants in 2019 and all the positives that we saw during that year, right? From how he started off in the preseason with a great spark, just looked amazing, to his game against Washington with 5 touchdowns, to his game against the Jets with 4 touchdowns, and his game against the Lions with 4 touchdowns. But those egregious mistakes that came from 2019, the fumbles, he had 19 fumbles that year, 11 of them lost, 6 of them scoop and scored for a touchdown. And we were able to kind of ignore them, right? Going into 2020, like, okay, he's a rookie. We're going to give him the pass. But the way that those mistakes started to trickle into the following seasons, I think back to 2021, I believe it was. What was the year that Saquon blew out his knee? That was 2020, actually. I think it was 2020. The Pittsburgh Steelers game that year, early in the year, where Daniel Jones has a third down situation in the green zone, knocking on the door of the red zone. He has all the time in the world to make the decision to be able to throw the ball out of bounds, but instead he just holds on to the ball too long, tries to last minute throw it out the back of the end zone, doesn't get enough on the ball, and it gets picked off in the back of the end zone. You know, for the sake of Jackson Dart, I just hope that he's not just going through the motions of saying, I can't do that. I need to correct that. Those type of mistakes in that particular point in time in the game can't happen. And he has to just be correcting those because we can't go into next season with those kind of boneheaded plays. And I look at the Saints fumble as, just a mistake. But I look at this third down interception late in this game with 5 minutes remaining as a bit of a like Daniel Jones type of New York Giants boneheaded mistake. And those things can't happen. And I agree with you here, BK. Like, I'm sick of the coaching staff too. Like, you can't continuously keep making these late game ill-advised decisions and putting your team in harm's way. No way. All right, let's get off into these giant overreactions. One day I'm going to have to just send the beard up here to do the giant overreaction because at times I wish I could just engage with y'all in the chat and just, be a bystander because, there's a lot of great conversations happening in the chat right now. But, for the sake of not keeping y'all here for 4 hours after a loss, if it was a victory, no problem. We'd be here for 4 hours all day long. Ain't no thing. But after a loss like that, man, we just got to get by these days. We got to get through these days. So let's go ahead and get off into this this first giant overreaction. These are going to be both from former New York Giants linebackers who were here during our team's greatest years, and I do value both of their opinions. We'll start with the one. We'll start with the one from Carl Banks here. This is going to be the first giant overreaction of the day. All right, so for those of y'all in the chat that might not know, the way we do the giant overreaction is we post statements on the screen, sometimes videos on the screen. And if you agree with the statement on the screen, then you can put a U in the chat to represent that you don't think it is an overreaction and you're going to take the under. So if you agree, put a U in the chat. If you think the statement on the screen is indeed an overreaction, you can put an O in the chat to represent you think that statement is an overreaction and you do not agree with it. If you need a little bit of more time on some of these, you can put a P in the chat to represent that you are taking the push. And feel free to explain why you have chose the decision that you have chose. But this first overreaction comes from Carl Banks. And I really condensed it for the graphic here, but I will read the entirety of the tweet. So Carl was responding to a Giants fan that said, Carl, as long as this coaching staff is here, they will never win consistently and they will never win a Super Bowl. This coach and his staff are just awful. 33 points in the fourth quarter, the mismanagement of the roster, the kicker situation, it's all pathetic. And Carl Banks responded and quote tweeted, and he said this. He said, I'm going to just pause the back and forth with who should have been in the game and what the coverage should have been and just say this. As a defensive player, if my offense gives my group a 3-score lead and 1 quarter to close out, there is no freaking way I'm walking off that field as a loser of that game. Think about this. Every time the Giants defense took the field in the fourth quarter, it was to either close out the game or to protect the win. Blame whoever you want, and you will be partially correct. This is on all of them. Now, I do agree with Carl Banks on this part of it. It should not matter who the coach is, what the scheme is, or any of that. Allowing 33 points in the fourth quarter is a straight-up collapse by this New York Giants defense. And I'll start by emphasizing how bad of the play the field was by the players. I know Brian Burns walked off that field and he felt extremely emotional about it. You know, there were beat reporters that were reporting that when they pulled up to his locker, he was extremely emotional, barely could speak. You could see when he spoke to the media, he was still getting dressed and he was just fidgety. He couldn't stop moving his hands. He was like rubbing in his lotion and buttoning up his shirt. He just trying to distract himself from really what just went down. But I also think that, you know, dropping 8 in coverage on that one play is not a good look. I do agree with that. But there were so many players surrounding the pass from Bo Nix on that final series of the game that did not step up and make a play. You look at the 3 guys that were the down linemen that were rushing the quarterback on that play. I forget who it was in the middle. I think it was Roy Robertson Harris, wearing number 95, I believe it was. When the ball got snapped, he did not even move. You look at the play that followed that play where Shane Bowen basically probably felt like, man, I fucked up. I went to basically a prevent style of defense there and dropped 8. I'm going to send the house at Bo Nix. You look at Abdul Carter on that play, he looks completely fucking gassed out. And it takes me back to when Shane Bowen didn't play Abdul Carter for a major portion of the snaps at the beginning of the season. And a lot of fans were like, what are we doing not playing Abdul Carter on the field at the same time with Brian Burns and with Kayvon Thibodeau and with Dexter Lawrence? And I do think that there is a bit of a conditioning type of thing here. And you heard the quote that I said about Bobby Okereke where he said, you know, however many, a 14, 15, 17, and a 19-play drive, you know, you can't expect us not to be tired on the field there or whatever he said, right? At the end of the day, I think the Giants defense was gassed because the Giants offense was not creating drives and creating momentum to be able to keep those drives alive and keep our defense off the field so that they could be well rested. But I heard Richard Sherman say this. He said, I love how folks think zone defense is easy, but every week you see guys getting killed in it because of bad eyes, lack of spatial awareness, and mental lapses. It's tough to play defense in the NFL, and if you can't play both, you will find yourself in a tough spot sooner or later. The part about that tweet that stands out to me is that we have personnel on this defense that is struggling in man coverage and is struggling in zone coverage. And in return, that's putting our defense in a really tough spot. You look at that debacle in Dallas. And after that debacle in Dallas, you just don't want to see Shane Bowen being timid late in games. But the players have to finish the fucking game, y'all. And I know if the New York Giants went out here and they dropped 8 in coverage and they made the play, nobody would be saying anything, Brian Burns included. He wouldn't have been saying, oh, why are we dropping 8? And we saw an emphasis on the attention to detail from the players giving their concern on this defense and wanting to get after the quarterback. And we saw Shane Bowen go and adjust to that in the Week 6 matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. But to see the Giants go out here now 2 times, the defense squandering opportunities to go out there and win the game is absolutely unacceptable. And I do agree with this portion that is clipped up here from Carl Banks' statement on Twitter. There's no way that you should be coming off that field a loser. I don't care if it's 5 of us from the chat that are calling the plays and calling the scheme for the New York Giants in the fourth quarter. There's no way that you should walk off that field as a loser with the position that the offense put them in. The offense went out there and scored 32 points in this game. And I always tell y'all, if an offense scores 30 or more points in a game, that's enough reason to be able to have your defense close the game out, and you should absolutely not lose that game. But with the personnel that we all, as fans, feel in our heart that we have great personnel on this defense. And Joe Shane paid great attention to detail when building this defense in the offseason through the draft and via free agency. I don't understand why we aren't getting the results, even if Shane Bowen is as poor of a defensive coordinator as we all imagine and that we are all seeing with our eyes. To me, Carl Banks' statement here is not an overreaction, but I could understand this going both ways. I will say that. Let me see what the chat is talking about here one time. And I believe we did get another super chat. Big shout out to Dexy one time in the building with the $9.99 super chat. Second of the day says, went with a fan, sat on their side, and even saw some of their fans leave. Had "Let's Go Giants" chants all through the stadium at halftime. I'll never forget it. Appreciate you helping us get through the week. Salute, man. That's just a stain of a memory, man. And I don't wish that upon not even just Giants fans. Like, I'm the kind of person that when I see a team unraveling, and I said this to my homie Stan when he texted me after the game, like, I don't like seeing teams unravel like that. Like, when the Atlanta Falcons squandered that 28-point lead in the fourth quarter or whatever it was in the Super Bowl, I felt terrible for them. And anytime I see a team, lose a game like this reminds me of when the New England Patriots lost to the Raiders, I believe, on the last play of the game where they were headed to overtime. And the wide receiver caught the ball, and instead of just getting tackled and going to overtime, he tried to lateral it back, and the ball got picked off and ran back for a touchdown. I don't wish that upon no player, no organization, no fan. I'm more of a fan that likes to see a team dominate throughout the game and win that. And to have this memory be, something that you lived and were at the game, that's nightmare type shit right there, man. I don't wish that upon nobody, but damn, man, it's tough, man. Shout out to Dexy for helping us raise the bar, but that's just unfortunate, man. Timmy Foosball said, I agree. It was a hell of a pass from Knicks, but the coverage should have dealt with it. Totally, man. Stoneface Ninja said he's taking the under. Every player on the defense needs to learn from this. This is a bad loss, but a good learning experience for a young developing team. Heck, your boy said Dable is supposed to be the captain of the ship. The bad clock management and lack of organization is where my biggest problem is with Dable. Agree. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says we got to burn them basic-ass, peppermint-ass white jerseys. Wear the color rushes. Agree with you on that, too. Derek Garcia Art says the mile high air definitely had the D huffing and puffing. I was going to say something like that. That's what she said. Abraham says no excuses. They should have known that pass was coming and been there and ready to intercept it. 100%. C-Rob said the Giants have not made plays in the back end all season. Can't expect them to make plays yesterday. Agree with you on that. Quota said he's taking the under. Except I think Bill Belichick, I believe, was his defensive coordinator. He would never have played that weak-ass scheme. This is 120% on Bowen. Yeah, I mean, I put a big blame on Bowen, but if it's 120% on Bowen, I don't know how much of the percentage goes on the players, and a lot of that goes on the players for me as well. Genesis said facts by Richard Sherman. The Illa says, have to contain the spot you are assigned to plain and simple. Like, damn, I need a comma right there. Like, shit. But the Illa's definitely spot on here. Abraham said our secondary lacks awareness. Absolutely. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says it all points back to Joe Shane. Bobby Banks likes it. Bookend Tackle says, who would have thought Flott is the best guy we have in the secondary? Crazy. It's crazy to think that. Sebastian said, I think it's more about having Dex and Carter on the bench. That's a big problem too. And maybe some of that had to do with the endurance or the stamina that they lacked in this game. Khalid Pasha says this is front office and coaching. No pushback from me. Michael Elliott said, I guarantee you Dable just lost the locker room by not firing Bowen. The defense ain't going to want to play for this bum. That's a good point right there, too. And I don't think that's an overreaction. Quota said the players got to make plays, but the strength of this team is the defensive line. I know that. You know that. Bowen knows that. America knows that. Yet we rushed 3 multiple times. I only saw rush 3 on that one play at the end, but I haven't gone back to really do a detailed look at the all-22. The first play to start the last sequence was the only one I saw where they rushed 3. I could be wrong, though. New said, what is our secondary strength? Fucking up games. C-Rob said the players do need to make the plays. Can we get players to make the plays? Shane has to go. Mac, the Giants fan, said pressure bust pipes. You can't allow any quarterback to be that comfortable in the pocket. I do agree. The time to throw was ridiculous on that one play. Heck, your boy said with the talent they have, with the talent they now have, they should not be losing the same way twice. That's completely unacceptable. And that's where it's on the coaches. That's another great point right there. Luis said he's taking the under. He agrees with the statement. New Jersey Justin said the defense just didn't play 4 quarters. If they did, it would have been 32-0. Boss Les said he's taking the under. The defense were set up by the offense to close out the game. It was on them to give up 33 1/4. Agree. Mac, the Giants fan, said, look what pressure did to the GOAT in Super Bowl 42. It's not rocket science. Now, this is the thing about this take, though, Mac. A lot of Giants fans are complaining when Shane Bowen sends just 4 at the quarterback during the game as well. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the biggest gripe that the fan base had was that Shane Bowen is not blitzing enough. In my opinion, this is where the personnel is actually not as good as people think it is. That's my opinion on it, because if you got 4 first-rounders on that front, on that defensive line, and we're unable to just rush forward to quarterback and be able to generate the necessary pressure we need, the Giants are, at least were going into this game, top 15 in pressures in the NFL, but it's tough. There's a lot of blame to go around, if you ask me. Jared said squandered momentum. Absolutely. That happened at the beginning of the 4th quarter. Quota said if Belichick was the defensive coordinator of this team, Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau would have 10 sacks. It's possible. It's definitely possible. FN Juice says, or MFN Juice says, remember Burns saying they changed the scheme our last game versus the Eagles? Shane just saying it. I agree with you on that. Tree says Dex and Carter need to be on the field, and you need to be able to know your players so you have them for the biggest plays. The details. It's all in the details. David said 3 moments which were low points as a Giants fan in no particular order. 1, the Deshaun Jackson punt return. 2, the playoff loss versus the 49ers blew a 24-point lead in the second half. And 3, the BS that happened yesterday. Facts. Those are the 3 moments where the New York Giants blew 19-plus point leads over the last couple of decades. David said he's taking the under. We all pretty much feel the same way. We should have not lost that game. Still not going to be holding this in. Still excited to see this team next week, and I haven't felt that way in a minute. More power to you. I don't know if I'm excited to see this team next week, but I just hope that they can get a victory. I think that's super important. Ash H says authentic. It's Abe812. Made it to your channel. Big salute, man. Appreciate you pulling up and rocking out with us on the YouTube side of things today, man. Tough loss for us. I hate it had to be this way. Marjorie says she's taking the under because 1,602 consecutive games in the NFL, the defense did not lose when leading by 18 points or higher. It's a statistic we brought up at the beginning of the stream, and man, that goes to show you the type of luck or the lack of luck that we have had in the past year. John Young said, Bowen has to go, bro. Times like this, I wish we had Wink still. It's so crazy to think about Wink Martindale during these times, right? Because I always tell you guys, for the majority of the fans, it's about the results. You guys remember when Wink Martindale was sending the kitchen sink late in games, 3rd down, 3rd and long? What was happening? Teams were converting on 3rd and long way too much on us, and people blamed Wink Martindale. I know, and I'm not saying this about John Young at all. I don't even think John Young was around back then. But when Wink Martindale and Brian Dable were having their beefs, everybody sided with Brian Dable, except me and a few others. But everybody outside of this chat was basically like, fuck Wink Martindale, and how terrible his, 3rd and long situational management was. And then we get Shane Bowen, who reminds me more of Patrick Graham with the softer defense with less aggressiveness, fucking up the same type of situations in a different way. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's unfortunate, but I miss Wink Martindale as well, and I do put the blame on Brian Dable for not being able to mend that relationship. But I got to go back to Marjorie again. This happened for 1,602 consecutive games in the NFL without this happening. It's terrible. No Met said exactly why you don't let a guy like McKinney walk. Points back to Joe Shane. Good point. Deedon said the Dallas, Saints, and Broncos games will make us stronger. Bring on Philly. Man, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Ash said, the fact that Benito was trash talking post-game is laughable. Like, we shut you down, bro. Have some self-awareness. Very true. Very true. Timmy Foosball said the lack of the comma is killing, bro. It was killing me. I had to rewind, control, alt, delete 4 times before I could say that shit the right way. And I pride myself on being a decent reader. God damn, that shit was tough, bro. Breezo Pate said that player on the Patriots was Jacoby Myers. Yeah, that was terrible. It was terrible. Kareem Yee in the building. Shout out Kareem Yee. Hector, your boy, said our coach lacks awareness. Should have told Bowen to not play soft on defense in the end of the game. Agree. Definitely agree. Juju said, I still believe in Adebo. Dude came back from injury. Feel like towards the end of the season and definitely next year he'll find his stride again. Light years better than Banks. That's true. He got to stay healthy. JD said, I wonder how much of Dable not firing Bowen is a Dable choice or a Mara decision. If Dable holds on to Bowen and Bowen pulls another end sequence failure, the entire coaching staff gets overhauled. That is a good point. And, I think a lot of John Mara's health issues is, a reason why they might not be firing somebody today, to be honest. David said, I heard Brian Cox is on our staff. Absolutely is. Yep. Yeah, I believe Brian Cox is a linebackers coach or somewhere on the defensive line. Legend. Definitely was a legend. And I'm glad to have him here. Timmy Foosball said Knicks was struggling with pressure, so to rush 3, especially after the debacle against the Cowboys, was sacrilegious. Definitely a good point there. Definitely a good point. Quota said, isn't that a lack of coaching then if this front isn't up to par with the hype, but Bowen continues to rush 4 only, never changing anything? Yeah, that would point to the coaching staff. But, you look at the adjustments that Shane Bowen has made throughout the year, and he's blitzed a lot more. The New York Giants coming into this game had the 12th highest blitz rate of any team in the National Football League. So, again, they're just not getting the results, man. The results are a big problem. NYC1T says Dable is inexcusably stupid. Yeah, that fourth quarter situational football with 5 minutes left to go in the game, not it. That's not it. The Illa said the strength of our secondary is keeping the play in front of us. Once offenses start trying to stretch the field and test the third level, that's when we fall apart, just like with Smith last week, which makes it tough on the defensive coordinator, I will say. Dean says, as sad as it is to say this, I knew when Phillips committed that DPI to keep the Broncos drive alive, it was over. Right after, who dropped the interception? RRH. Oh, Roy Robertson Harris. Yeah, he did the tip one at the line of scrimmage, then he dropped it. Yeah. You felt it. They just couldn't make a play. Robert says Dable lacks clock management. That's very true. And if that's the case, right, because managing the clock on the sideline is not easy, then why aren't the Giants hiring the correct personnel to go out there and just have somebody who's just a situational guy that they can trust? Just like a straight-up analytical dude. Instead, they're going out there and just winging it off field, and it's just not working out for them. NYC1T says, how you going to be an offensive guru and have zero ability to run a 4-minute offense to end a game? Yeah, I think that for Brian Dable, these issues weren't a thing when he was just an offensive coordinator. And you kind of got to send some props to Sean McDermott over there with the Buffalo Bills in that regard. They've had some mismanagement of the clock late in games, but with the Giants, it's coming up every other week. And that definitely is an indictment on our head coach for sure. No Met says, we're like this because we beat Tom Brady 2 times in a Super Bowl and unceremoniously fired Tom Coughlin. We ain't been the same since, man. We ain't been the same. Bookend Tackle says, offense is at least fun to watch. That's true. 1T said, dude got 2 chances at 4-minute offense, 2 chances. He came up with a 3-and-out and a pick. Yeah, trash results. And listen, in that situation, I don't mind if you go 2 3-and-outs. I'd prefer you to get the first down. But if you commit to the running game and you run the damn ball 6 times in that situation and it results to 2 3-and-outs, I wouldn't even have any gripes today. No Met says Wink would have sent them dogs. That's facts. And he also said, and yup, Wink got blamed for a lot. Big Blue with Drew says, I miss Wink every day. Yeah. Sebastian says, and who beefed with Wink? Dable got rid of him. Man, I'm tired of him for real. Yup, that is who had the beef with him. And it was, it started off by, firing the Wink's two buddies that were the two brothers that coached the linebackers and one of the other units as well. That all points back to Brian Daboll. Big Blue with Drew said, bring back Lawrence Tynes. He's got some kids that are kicking the ball pretty good too, man. So hopefully by the time they're ready to go, we can bring in one of his sons maybe too. Journey said, what's up, Authentic? Checking in after a long day at school. All my friends are Commanders, Eagles, and Cowboys fans. As you can imagine, today was rough. Yeah, I can imagine, bro. I'm, fortunate enough where I'm not going to have to see too many faces today out there and get clowned about how my team failed to put the last nail in the coffin. No Met said, to be fair, Wink wasn't fired. Wink's assistants were fired, and that pissed Wink off. That is true. And they mutually parted ways, yeah. Timmy Foosball says, hey, fuck that. I definitely was on Team Wink. Don't disrespect your boy like that. Wink was my guy. Yeah, I said y'all in the chat, I'm talking about the general Giants consensus around our team and our fan base. I don't know about this, man. I don't know, I don't think that there was any mending the situation. I'll never forget when Brian Daboll went up to the press conference when all the beef started to get reported by Jay Glazer too, and he said, nah, there's nothing going on. Me and Wink had donuts earlier today. Heck, your boy said, I sided with Daboll in the Wink situation because of blind hope. I was hoping Daboll was the right guy until he proved me wrong the next 2 years. Don't blame me, bro. Quota said, I was one of the Wink haters. He had our premier pass rushers drop into coverage while our corners blitzed and got beat on third down. But Bowen and Wink just suck. Both can be true at the same time. That's very true. Now, I'm not going to side with Wink Martindale being a terrible defensive coordinator, but there's the possibility. I can't rule it out that they're both not good and both weren't the men for the job. Problem said that was a pivotal game, man. It really was. And he says, and it was a game that we could have put the league on notice. It's going to be very interesting to see how the rookies can rally the troops and turn things around. If they go out there and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday, I'll be back. Tree said, hey, they got us back for the Super Bowl when we what's he saying there? When we go picked their ass too bad was in the 80s. Going to watch that game to make myself feel better. Yeah, I feel you on that. It was a bit of revenge for the Denver Broncos. How we did beat them back in the 80s in the Super Bowl. So that's definitely something to consider there for sure. Let me see. This is Gerald or Gerald, I believe. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but big shout out to the fan one time with the $10 super chat. He said, you know what's crazy? If the guys on the field would have picked that ball off or at least a pass breakup, a bunch of people would have been singing Bowen's praises. Ain't no doubt about it. Ain't no doubt about it. And it's just unfortunate we got to walk away with that L, after that. Results is what matters, and most of the fan base have no idea what scheme they're even looking at when they're looking at Shane Bowen's defense. But they'll say, I don't like those schemes, as I saw somebody say to me on Twitter with the plural. I don't like those schemes. And I was like, I just got to stay away from this because it just sounds like maybe you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But it's tough, man. It's tough. As fans, we don't know truly what's going on within the scheme of the Giants defense or what's going on with the coaching staff or what these guys are being told to do. But when you see the results end up like that, it almost seems like nobody is given the correct pointers for our defense to be able to go out there and make the necessary plays to just close the coffin at the end of a game like this. And it's definitely unfortunate, man. But shout out to my dog Jay for helping us raise the bar with that $10 super chat. That definitely goes a long way, my brother. And first time seeing you in the building, I feel like. Good to see you. Good to have you here. Your presence is what is most important today. Let's see. Quota said Daboll can't fire Bowen. The second he does, the media will zero in on Daboll even harder. Think about it. The crazy part is that Brian Daboll is now 2-2 since Jackson Dart took over as the quarterback. The Giants' offense now in the last 3 games is 7th in the NFL in scoring. Daboll is doing his part on the offensive side of the ball. If he could find any way to correct some of these issues on the defensive side of the ball, even if that meant firing Shane Bowen, I think it would speak volumes. But it's tough, man, when your defense is going out there and they can't close the coffin on plays like this to just end the game. It's putting our head coach in a real bind right now, if you ask me. Wyatt Earp said, let's trade Banks for a stadium full of medium. If we could, I would. Journey said, can you elaborate more on Mara's health leading to Bowen staying? Yeah, so I just think that it's hard to make these kind of decisions, and more importantly, make the decisions that are going to have to be made after you fire these people, right? So if you fire Shane Bowen now, what's the point, to be honest? Because at the end of the season, if things continue to go down this direction and spiral, all of these guys are likely going to get fired going into the next year. We talked about Rand Carthen talking about Brian Dable being safe, for the rest of the season. And I do agree that I think Brian Dable is going to be safe to make it through the end of the season, barring some type of catastrophe, which hopefully that's the last one we saw in the season on Sunday. But I just think that our true owner and decision maker in John Mara is dealing with, treatment for cancer right now. So it's tough for him to really, have his finger on these situations. And even if it was me, I think I would allow the season to just pan out and play out the way that it's going. And then at the end of the year, if you feel like you need to make a coaching change, do it with the entire staff. Like, firing Shane Bowen is not going to fix anything right now. Why, if you're indeed looking at firing Brian Dable at the end of the season, if you don't get the results that you asked for, which John Mara spoke to the media and said it at the end of the year last year, what's the point of allowing him to fire the defensive coordinator? He's not going to be able to hire a defensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, to come in right now and implement new philosophy and implement new scheme. He's going to have to likely bring in an interim defensive coordinator to just take over the job. It would likely be our defensive backs coach. And I don't really think that solves much. It's not to say that Shane Bowen shouldn't be fired, but maybe John Mara with the health situation is just looking at it, as, listen, once I get through this and get to the end of the year, then we can make a final decision. Wyatt Earp said, how about Antonio Pierce? I think this is a perfect segue to go into our next giant overreaction here that features Antonio Pierce. So let's go ahead and talk about it. This was Antonio Pierce speaking on his thoughts on the New York Giants and the future of the season.
Is there a chance they could make it to the postseason? There's always a chance. But
no, there's no chance. Sorry, love you. I'm a Giant through and through. But this team is not going to playoffs. Sorry.
If you want Antonio Pierce to come in and be a head coach or even take over as a defensive coordinator, I don't know if those comments right there are going to yield well for him. But he says, I'm a Giant through and through, but this team is not going to the playoffs. And I think everyone in the chat is going to view this one as a non-overreaction, and they're probably going to agree with this sentiment here from Antonio Pierce, former New York Giants linebacker, won a Super Bowl with us. According to NFL.com, the Giants currently have a 3% chance of making the playoffs right now. Can't forget that they started off 0-3. They are currently in 15th place in the NFC. The only team with a worse record than the New York Giants in the NFC is the New Orleans Saints, sitting at 1-6. And their one win was against us. What do you know? Giants and the Cardinals are sitting at 2-5 right now. The Commanders are in 13th place in the NFC right now with a record of 3-4. If the playoffs started today, the only NFC team representing the NFC East that would make the playoffs would be the Philadelphia Eagles as the division winner. The number one seed right now is the Tampa Bay Bucks at 5-1. The Packers at number 2 at 4-1-1. The 49ers, surprisingly, at number 3 at 5-2. Philadelphia Eagles also at 5-2 with the 4th spot. The Rams are sitting at 5-2. They would have the first wild card spot right now behind the 49ers, but they are tied with the same record. The 49ers just have the tiebreaker. The Seahawks would be number 6 at 4-2, and the Detroit Lions would get the final spot right now at 4-2. A lot of that's going to change, obviously, over the next couple of weeks to come, but I got to agree with Antonio Pierce. I don't think the Giants are making the playoffs. Let's tap in with the chat, see how y'all are feeling about this one, and then we'll get y'all up out of here. I already saw a push. We'll save that one for the end. I like that. Solitary Camp said, what a game. I'm not even mad. Man, that makes one of us because that game had me angry as hell. Evan says Antonio Pierce is speaking the truth. Trees said if they fire Dable, they should fire Average Joe as well. I'm not mad at that. David said Tom Coughlin was coach for how many years? And every year all I heard was how bad he was on how we should fire him. Same thing now. Who's the replacement? Seems like the viable candidates right now to replace Brian Dable, if he were fired, a lot of people are talking about John Gruden. A lot of people are talking about Mike McCarthy. A lot of people have been talking about the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. That's really all I've heard on the coaching front. But you're right. You got to have a plan, a succession plan for sure. Let's see what else we got here. JD said it's an overreaction. He said, bruh, look at the divisional standings. If we beat Philly, the division is still wide open. Well, I don't know about that. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles right now are sitting at 5-2, and the New York Giants have 2 wins. So if you beat the Philadelphia Eagles, you're still 2 games back halfway through the season. And we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. They're a better team than the New York Giants. Entering this Week 7 matchup against the Broncos, when I was at Camden's baptism, the Beard's son, a lot of my day ones, you know, Commanders fans and a couple other fans around the NFC East were saying the division is wide open. And I was like, I don't think so. And had the Commanders won against the Dallas Cowboys, and more importantly, had the New York Giants beat the Denver Broncos, then I could have said that. I don't think the division is wide open right now. And I could understand, JD, if you took the push on this one, but thinking it's an overreaction at this point, just look at the percentages of teams that start off 0-3 and make the playoffs. It's slim to none. 0-2, your chances dwindle underneath 5% already. And then 0-3, you have very limited chances. You would need a hell of a run from the New York Giants. And I'll pull up the schedule before we end this stream so we can look at it after this overreaction. But it's going to be tough. I wouldn't completely say it's impossible, but it's going to be tough. Sebastian said he's taking the under. He's speaking straight facts. Luis said he's taking the under. Would love to have him as our defensive coordinator too. Berg said he's taking the under. Would love to make the playoffs, but we have too many gaps throughout the organization to focus on that right now. Simeon said he's taking the under. He's right. C-Rob said he's taking the under. Duh. Dean said he's taking the under. That's a true statement. No way in hell we're going to the playoffs. The defense isn't going to just flip the switch. Timmy Foosball said he just talked himself out of a job. You ain't lying. New Jersey Justin said, so you're telling me there's a chance? Hyphen Wade said he's taking the under. Real cutthroat and short period, but it's pretty accurate. Mistakes on the offensive side of the ball, poor clock management, and coaching on the defense not happening. No Met said he's taking the under. We may be one of the playoff-bound teams, I guess he's saying, but we ain't going. And right now, we don't deserve to go. Do agree with that. Timmy Foosball said I'd have him back in a heartbeat still. Quota said he's taking the under. He's speaking facts. Okay, No Mets cleaned it up and said we can beat some playoff teams. Got you on that. That's very true. I mean, we beat the Eagles already. We beat the Chargers. We're definitely capable of beating some playoff teams, that's for sure. DeIlla said the Packers are looking real fraudulent right now. Maybe we can get a victory against them, possibly. Mike said he's taking the push. No one in the NFC is running away with it. They got to stop choking, because if they beat Philly, Dallas, and Washington, it's possible. Possible. Simeon Toko said, if you want these coaches and possibly Shane gone, you pray the Giants don't make the playoffs. That's a good point. Mac, the Giants fan, said, absolutely taking the under. This team will be fun to watch, but clearly it will be a roller coaster the whole season. Evan taking the under. Genesis taking the under. He said, it's the truth. The rest of the season is building and fixing the same problem we've been having with game management. Juju said, if not a full firing of Bowen, we should at least assign Andre or Markin as a co-defensive coordinator to check Bowen. Not mad at that. Deaton Shelton said he's taking the push. The Philly game will make or break it. Lou Mateo said it's an overreaction. We got through Philly. Everything is open. Glass half full kind of guy. That makes one of us. Greg, the turd hauler, said fire the three stooges, Dable, Kafka, and Bowen. Not mad at that. Marjorie said, but I would be worried about the defensive players giving up and making life miserable for our young rookie quarterback. I believe Bowen needs to go ASAP. Greg, the turd hauler, said fire the three stooges. He doubled down on it. Luis said, get me Harbaugh if he gets fired. Excuse me. Ravens would be crazy to fire Harbaugh. Boss Les said he's taking the push. We've played teams really tough with Jackson Dart. I like that. Greg Turdhaller said no to Gruden or McCarthy. SHU Carter said, would that Wilson defensive coordinator come over? Wasn't he the top guy when we were looking for one? He was, and he didn't take the job because the Giants wouldn't allow him to bring in his own staff. It's the one and only story I've broken. Let's see. B-Rog said it's an overreaction. There's always a chance. Maybe in some alternate dimension. Come on, let's keep ourselves rooted in reality. I appreciate the encouragement. I Believe Blue said he taking the under. No chance. Gregory said under. Sorry, not making the playoffs. JD said 2 games back with the tiebreaker and still 2 divisional games to go. Yeah, the fate of the tiebreaker would be important, obviously, in that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm still not feeling like that. I'm not feeling optimistic about it, but more power to y'all. Call Terry Sabin and ask her if Nick can come out to play. Not mad at that either. Quota said, I got to go to work, but I'm going to end on this. Maybe the football gods didn't mean for us to win. DT passed away at age 33. The Broncos scored a total of 33 points. That's fucking crazy, man. Rest in peace to Demaryion Thomas. That's you can't make that up. David said, who the hell thought the Giants were going to the playoffs? When did that become the expectation? The overreaction is from the fans who see a couple of plays and declare them good. The team is on the come up. I like that statement. Kareem Yee said he's taking the under. Defense can't close out games, and the offense doesn't have enough playmakers you can count on when it matters. Very true. Evan said the Eagles or Cowboys are going to win the division. I picked the Eagles to win the division at the beginning of the year with the Commanders taking a second place. Quota said, great stream. We'll see y'all again later. Big shout out to Quota, man. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, bro. B-Rog said it's an overreaction. There is always a chance, maybe in some alternate dimension. Same comment. I feel you on that. Heck, your boy said yes to Gruden or McCarthy. They have won a lot of games in their career. Gruden also is familiar with Dart and how he plays. I'd welcome John Gruden. I like John Gruden. Mike said Dallas and Washington ain't shit, so ... Lou Mateo said overreaction. We can Jim Fossil this shit. All right, I like that. Dave said Gruden, that's a joke. Don't agree with that. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Gruden from his statements and whatnot, but Gruden knows ball, that's for sure. Brownie says they'd need to go 7-3 to even have a shot at 9 games, LOL. Yeah, it's a wrap, man. Bookend said he's taking the under, but I'll hold out hope. I like that. DeIlla said he's taking the under. I think we still have a shot at the playoffs. We have a chance at backing in. Hyphen Wade said there's a lot that has to go right for us to go on a run like that. The coaching to player transition has to happen. These things are not coinciding well enough with each other for us to get there. Agree. Evan said we're not making the playoffs. This was a must-win game if we wanted a chance at making it. Sebastian said if we sweep the Eagles, we can lose the rest of the year and I'll be fine. I love that. Greg says we need a no-nonsense defensive-minded coach. Tired of these finesse, offensive, entitled, incompetent assholes. I like that. I like that, Greg. Problem says our best-case scenario is having a 2022 Lions run where they turned the culture around and played spoiler to the Packers in the last game of the season. Maybe we can spoil the Cowboys late season. Yeah, and the Lions have been basically a contender ever since. That's very true. Heck, your boy said he's taking the under. When's the last time we even won 3 games in a row? Think back to this. Like, the Giants haven't even won 2 games in a row this season, you know? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But a winning streak would be nice before we think about the playoffs. David said, we're just a team that is young and sneaky dangerous. We don't have the players to compete in the playoffs. Very true. JD said also Dart and Scat have admitted to failures. Compartmentalized the losses and bounced back. Who's to say they won't headed into Philly? Culture setters will help the rest of the squad bounce back. I hope so. I'm just not banking on it. Greg said, get me Nick Saban as at least a consultant on the next coach and general manager. I would love that, Greg. Great statement right there. David said, Harbaugh, that would be a coach I would change everything for. Jarrett said Gruden, Harbaugh, or Flores any day. It won't be Flores with the lawsuit that he had against the New York Giants. Breezo Page said not counting anything before Dable got his quarterback. Dart has showed so much promise. So, okay, let me make sure I'm digesting this. Not counting anything before Dable got his quarterback. So that's a clean slate, he's saying. Dart has shown so much promise because Dable is pouring everything into him. Pause. Unless he crashes out like Joe Judge, he needs to come back next year. This could have been a giant overreaction in its own right here. And I applaud you, Breezo, for this kind of optimism. I do. Brian Dable, man, it's a tough situation. And I want to root for him until he's gone, for sure. But not being able to close out these games and the results, just not a good look. Just not a good look for him. Yeah, and a lot of the same from you guys. I'd go through all of them, but it'd be tough to do it. Michael Knight says, what's good, authentic? AP is on point with this statement. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kareem, you said, had Kayvon Thibodeau not committed that offsides penalty, there was a wide receiver that was wide open on the top of the field. David said, they all know ball. Gruden won't translate in NY. I don't know about that. I mean, Gruden has had success basically everywhere he went. Tough. I respect the opinion, though, most definitely. Greg said, so in other words, Gruden hasn't been relevant since the turn of the century. Can't get pushback on that. Has not been in football for a while here. Adrian S. said the goal at the beginning of the year was to see when Dart would play and how he would do. We need to continue to watch him develop. No one thought playoffs at the beginning of the year with this schedule. Yeah, that's for sure. 100% agree with you on that. And it seems like everybody kind of agrees on this last one here. I want to see this statement here from Hyphen. Hyphen said, we all forgot that Dan Campbell is that kind of guy who can rally the troops. Brian Dable does not strike me as that, I guess, or as that kind of guy at all. I don't see players going that hard for Brian Dable. And Simeon said, Brian Dable is the head coach, not just a quarterback coach. All great statements from you guys. The Illa said, I tell you right now, if you live in Maryland and listen to 105.7 The Fan, you'd never want John Harbaugh. The Ravens fan base constantly gives him the business. That is true. That is true. And we'll leave it there, y'all. 2 hours today on the Giant Overreaction. Didn't want this one to go too crazy long. Again, man, just an unfortunate L that's going to linger maybe the entire season, but absolutely the entire week. We'll see how things go. Let me just double check on the Super Chats and make sure I just got them all. Got that one. Yep. I don't want to leave nobody out, If you did send one in earlier and I missed it, go ahead and let me know in the chat here. Adrian says, keep up the great work. Another great therapy session. No Met says, other than the pick, what else was concerning about Dart's fourth quarter play? I thought Dart played extremely well throughout this game. The interception was the one major blemish on otherwise a really good performance. Especially considering the wide receiver core that was out there, and I think that has a lot to do with the completion percentage being so low. Bookend said Dable needs to be less emotional and keep his head in the decision-making. He missed Burns not making it back across the line because he was so upset, should have called a timeout. Yeah, that was another pivotal point in this game. Sebastian said that this loss just reeks. They just need to sweep Philly. Sweeping Philly would help. And we haven't beat Philly again since 2013 in Philly. So we need to just, kill that streak. Heck, your boy said win 3 in a row, and I'll believe we have a chance again. JD said, authentic, always bring in the goods. I'm glad that was a typo there, because I was like, damn, JD, we got beef, bro. He said, thanks for the time, bro. All day. Timmy Foosball said, another great episode, brother. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets said 3 in a row equals tough. New Jersey Justin said, I actually believe we can sweep Philly. Philly's defense is not Denver, and their offense is bad. I agree. I definitely agree. There's a possibility we could sweep them. And Saquon is dealing with an injury there, and you can just tell he's just not the same guy right now. And their offensive line's dealing with a couple of injuries up front as well. We shall see. And I did promise to pull up the schedule for you guys before we got up out of here. So let's go ahead and just do that real quickly before we sign off on this stream. And here goes the rest of the schedule here. So we're looking at taking on the Eagles for the second time, and then it's 49ers, the Bears, who are playing some really good football, the Packers, who are maybe a beatable team, the Lions, who are a really good team, the Patriots are playing lights out ball right now with Drake May. Commanders, always going to be a tough divisional matchup. The Vikings, that's looking like that could be a victory. The Raiders is looking like that could be a victory. Cowboys looking like, it could be maybe another shootout, but their offense definitely got on track this past week again. And that's going to be a tough one. So, we have 2 victories right now in the bag. The Raiders could be one. The Vikings could be one. Maybe you sneak another one out. I predicted the Giants would win 6 games this year. It's looking like they might not even get to 6 games. So that's where we'll leave it. Throw some biceps in the chat before we get up out of here. Hyphen Wade said that Minnesota game strikes a minimal amount of fear into me. But now it's a division game, so we know how to fight against each other and compete. I got some hope for that. But what about afterwards? Very true. Mike says Cowboys, Vikings, Washington, Raiders, Bears, Packers, all winnable. DeIlla said 49ers are slowly getting healthy. McCaffrey looked like McCaffrey last night. McCaffrey's been a beast this year, man. Let me see. New Jersey Justin said, authentic, we winning out. I hope you are right. I hope you are right, brother. And we'll leave it there, man. Big shout out to the gang. Appreciate all you guys pulling up today, representing the family, and, trying your best to stay level-headed and also encouraging me to stay a little bit level-headed. Y'all know that I'm more of, on the pessimistic side of things. I like to be critical when it comes to the New York Giants, but appreciate you guys. And I don't feel that much better, but I do feel a little bit better going into Tuesday. I got a lot of work this week, y'all. I'm trying to close out the edit on the documentary that we shot last Thursday, and I'm closing out some content for an awesome marijuana company in the DMV called Colta, and it's going to be tough, but I'm going to try to go live as many times as we can this week before we get to the preview show and try to help you guys have a speedy week after a devastating loss. And again, man, I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for tuning into these streams, especially after devastating losses like that. When the Giants win games, it's easy to pull up and look at all the content. It makes it fun, and it makes our week that much more enjoyable. But when they lose like this, I think that is a true test of our fandom. And we've had to deal with that a lot over the last couple of decades, and I hope we don't have to deal with that much more. But we shall see. Y'all know how we end every stream over here on Authentic in the Beard. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound, and a life without dreams is a life in black and white. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT and New York legend, Combat Jack. And that is a wrap. Unfortunately. I feel like I could stay up here and kind of sulk in this loss for the entirety of the day, but that's going to do it. Salute to all of y'all, man. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening as best as you can. I will try to do the same. And like I said, I will be trying to pop up for some more live streams. Who knows? Maybe even like later today. We'll see, man. We've been doing like these afternoon streams for the most part, but it might be a good idea to pop up at night and just maybe we just pop up and do like a Q&A or something. So don't be too surprised if you see another stream scheduled. I appreciate y'all hanging out today and waiting around as we waited on some of the news to come out and, thinking that Shane Bowen could have possibly been fired. But that's going to do it for now. Catch y'all on the flip side. Y'all know what it is, man. Always love. Y'all stay blessed. And till that casket dips, man, go New York Giants. Y'all be good, man. Peace out, y'all.
Spike don't care.